everyone. Some of you may already know, but if not, hello, my name is Sam. I'm the founder of Tern, and I'm also a full-time graphic designer for an agency in London full-time. So the Tern is kind of like what I do outside of work. Tern is a platform helping young creatives or creatives who are trying to get their foot in the door in the industry, basically helping them find work and sharing the stories of creatives at all different levels of their career in lots of different sectors as well, to try and give you a bit of context in regards to maybe what you're studying and what that might look like as a job, because sometimes that's not really explained very well. So hopefully events like this that we kind of host, and we get lovely people like Olga coming in to kind of share their experiences, will just shed some light on what it's really like to make a living as a creative person. So thank you so much for everyone for joining us. I will hand it over to the lovely Olga, who is going to tell you all about what it's like to be a multidisciplinary creative. Over to you, Olga.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Just before I start and get going on a tangent, what I wanted to say is that I'd very much like to keep this conversation as something that's quite casual. So at any point, if you want to ask any questions, just put them in the chat and then we'll read them out loud and make it a more flexible conversation rather than, me just looking at the slides and telling you what I see in them, which I'm also going to be doing, but hopefully we're going to discuss everything around those slides as well. And let me share my screen. Okay, can you see it?
Yeah.
Perfect, great. So what I would like to say is, obviously, as you know, my name is Olga, and I am currently a photographer, a videographer, and also I've recently started doing UX and UI design. But the way it started for me was at the beginning. I decided to move from my home country, which is Latvia, to the UK to study photography and media business at the University of Hertfordshire, because I've always been a very keen photographer. And once I've graduated, I figured out that the best next thing to do would be to move to London and actually get real life experience to see what it is like to be a photographer. So I started my freelance career, and I've done primarily photography and also assisting to other photographers to continue learning the craft. While I was on my journey, I've got a chance to work with some amazing clients. And honestly, it's been a great privilege to actually be able to, collaborate with such brands. But also, what was quite interesting is that, as you can see, they are quite different and they come from completely different industries. And at the time of me just starting off as a freelancer, I didn't necessarily have an idea of which type of photography I'd like to do. And it was something that I kind of figured out as I went. And not to say that I was, incredibly lucky to just kind of pick and choose. At times, I would just be sort of like offered a job and I would just go along with that as well. And it was an incredible sort of learning curve for me to figure out which kind of things I do enjoy doing. I think as a creative, I value quite a few things very, very highly. And those would be being quite aware, whether of yourself or of your surroundings, being initiative, making sure that if there is something that you know of going on, you're getting involved in that, and also being candid and sincere when it comes to executing your projects. And while I was sort of dipping in and out of different projects and doing different assistant work, I realized that what I really enjoy doing is capturing candid moments and taking pictures on the streets. I've really enjoyed doing street photography, but that wasn't exactly something that I got commissions of, at least at the beginning. And it was a bit frustrating in a way, because I sort of, at that time, figured out that it would be, you know, the dream job. I'd really love to be paid to be a street photographer, but how do I get there? Nothing kind of, you know, nothing really came to mind in a way, up until the moment when I was doing a completely different job in a fashion modeling agency, believe it or not. And I met a um,
Oh,
uh,
the connection's frozen.
um, graphic designer who came to,
Sorry, I think the connection just dropped a little bit there. Could
yeah,
maybe start that bit again? You met someone, you said?
yeah, sorry about that. It has to be typical the Wi-Fi the connection for easy. Oh, yes. So I was doing a job and I met a graphic designer who was getting his headshots done. We started talking, and you know, it's not a typical maybe networking kind of an environment. We just started talking and we've exchanged our details for maybe some sort of a future collab. But you know, at the time I sort of thought, well, what kind of a collab am I going to have with a graphic designer? But you know, okay, fine, let's just get on with the day. And then interestingly enough, a few weeks later, he contacted me and he said that there is a project going for National Portrait Gallery, which would be the Portrait of Britain. And he would like to submit some photos and he would like to collaborate with me on that, because he was actually Brixton born and bred. And now with the next slide, I'm going to reveal that that was Kieron Lewis, who has given a talk a few weeks or about a month earlier, and you
Yeah,
might have.
end of February now. It's gone so quick. But
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. Time is kind of like a bit of a lump at the moment. But you might have been to his talk, and he was in fact the graphic designer who approached me at the studio. And our first project together was us going around Brixton, where he was born, taking pictures of people, and really, actually, most importantly, having a lot of fun. And it was such a, honestly, just like such a great moment, because I felt that that dream of being a street photographer was coming a bit closer. It was really, really rewarding. Actually, it was quite a while ago. Must have been what, 5, 6 years now, 7. That's, yeah, 7 years ago. Feels like less than that, but I felt incredibly happy doing that, and it went really well. Our first project, but more importantly than that, we just connected so well. We continued working together. We both really figured out that what we like doing is talking to people, taking pictures of different settings, and also talking to young creatives. So we've done quite a lot of different conversations in unis and schools, sharing our journeys, which are quite different actually, and having a really good time. One of the projects that I really, really enjoyed working on is a restoration of an old, actually it was a betting shop, and during the pandemic, two people who lost their business in the coffee industry decided to start their own coffee shop, which was a really sort of heartwarming story to hear, because they're both local to the area where I live. And I decided that it would be great to document their journey, because unfortunately, as they've kind of went out of business, it meant that they had to do everything from scratch, everything with their own hands. And well, I have to say that I sort of forced myself into this project because I've heard of them before, and I realized that it's literally just up the road from where I live, and it would be something that I would very much enjoy documenting as a part of the local community. So I sort of knocked on their shop window and introduced myself and asked them if they would like me to document their refurbishment and the process, and ended up following them around for about 3 months while they were making everything come together, which was great, honestly. At the time, I started filming and interviewing them as well, and I think that's where it became very apparent that I really, really enjoy doing video. But you know, there was always this hesitation because as a photographer, I'm trained in producing stills, and what was holding me back, apart from not knowing anything about the software or, you know, how to kind of like get around a camera when it's videoing, I just didn't think that I could be able to think in moving image and have that storyline put together. And honestly, I think I sort of danced around the subject for maybe about 2 years, just thinking, oh yeah, well, yeah, no, it's just like too difficult. And when I started making videos, I just thought that they are, well, you know, the first videos, they were quite not sort of like the best quality, but it was, again, a very, very rewarding project, and it felt quite similar to maybe how I felt about how sort of right street photography fits at the time. So I just thought I'd love to pursue that further, and I applied for a job, and it's a funny one actually, because at the time I didn't kind of have anything in my portfolio. In fact, I only just did one video, and it was, well, you know, just like a first video, so don't expect much from it. I applied for a job, and I came to the studio, and the job description was photography and videography sort of specialist, because it was kind of like an auction house, and they needed to take pictures of their of the items that were going on, and also video them and create stories about some very special items. So I came there and I thought, well, you know, I'm already here, so I might as well. Basically just said that I'm completely confident with videoing, it's completely fine, don't worry about that. Then they asked me to do an actual task during the interview, and I thought, yeah, okay, come, let's do this. The task was take pictures of something that's quite sort of difficult to capture, not at all light friendly, and then also to film something and edit it on the spot and produce the sort of final images and the final video. Well, yes, just kind of trying to compose myself with the super shaky hands. I proceeded to film for them, and then proceeded to edit it on the software that I used probably just like a couple times before that. It was fairly nerve-wracking. And then, you know, as it is always, oh, thank you very much, we'll let you know how you've done, we're probably going to get back to you in about a week's time. Okay, thank you. A week, and there's been nothing, just nothing, silent. So I thought, obviously, I didn't get the job because this, and you know, not producing a high quality piece after all, which is fair enough. And maybe about 3 days after, they got in touch with me and said, oh, we loved your work, it's great, it's better than anyone else's, you're hired. Oh, thank you. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that. I was very, very pleased, and also very, very nervous, because I thought that it means that I'll have to, you know, kind of calm myself down and do it on a daily, more or less basis. And you know what? It was fine. I obviously was very nervous when I started doing it, and it was quite hard for me, but eventually I got very comfortable with that, and thanks to that job I ended up thinking that it's actually not a problem to start something from scratch, even though you might have hesitations, and you might think, okay, well, I've sort of laid my path here, I want to do this, I've done the university degree, I've put so many years into doing photography or any other craft, and why do I need to sort of deviate? Does that actually feel a little bit like I've sort of given up? Does that mean a little bit that I've not sort of succeeded with what I wanted to succeed with, and I'm just kind of picking something else? I don't think so. In fact, I really enjoyed the difference between two mediums. And as I went on to do more and more video commissions, I've been incredibly lucky to work with some fantastic clients, and literally all the things that I probably wouldn't be able to do if I was carrying on with photography at the same, in the same manner as I was. And this additional skill allowed me to experience some completely new locations and new people, work with other teams as well, and just I guess ultimately really grow as a person. So I think that one of the kind of thoughts that I have is it's completely fine, or even almost necessary, to fake it till you make it, especially in that little kind of breakaway moment when you think, well, I kind of know this skill, but here's my new skill. What do I know about it? I actually know, my old skill, I maybe know 80%. And then the new one, it's kind of like 30%. And what can I offer with 30%? But you can just actually come to the job and offer them 100% of something that you also can carry on from the previous skill. Because some of the skills that you have, they're not technical, they're interpersonal. And, with photography, it's always kind of being able to think on your feet quickly, being able to say yes to some sort of like last minute changes, being able to continue, adapt the way you think and think creatively. And all of that definitely applies to video as well. I think quite a lot of the work is actually attitude. So as long as you bring that, you'll be fine. So in a way, what I wanted to maybe touch upon and specifically mention is that, as I said, when you're thinking about something, and maybe if you thought about it more than 3 times, you should do it. Don't put it off. Don't think about it for the 4th time. Just try it out, because if you try it and then it doesn't work out, then you'll be exactly where you started. But at that point, you already have this knowledge that, well, I've tried something, kind of thought it would be my thing, but it wasn't, and it's fine. And then I can continue carrying on, maybe figuring out what else I can do, or carry on with the other discipline as well. And another thing is, when you're waiting for that perfect project to come your way, and you're thinking, man, I wish I got this client who would commission me to do this, because I'm dying to do that. Why not do it yourself? It's incredibly rewarding, and it's obviously challenging, because you need to find time for that around everything else. Yes, definitely, but it's incredibly rewarding, and you have complete creative freedom, something that you might not always have when it comes to a client. Something, maybe something that it's kind of like you have to compromise some of that when you're actually working on a client brief. But what's great about projects like that is that you then get to potentially take that project and publish it, and actually put it out there, and use it as something that you were missing in your portfolio, so that, for example, you can apply for a job of a similar profile. Because in a way, to get experience, you need experience, and it's just that horrible loop. But you are very much within your own potential to give yourself that experience. And I think it's great, because there's no pressure. just don't be hard on yourself, I guess. So that kind of was my thinking behind transitioning from photography to videography. But then the pandemic hit, and well, photography and videography are both very sort of like present disciplines. They require people to be there in a specific venue. It's very hard to create photographs when you are in lockdown. So at the time, I was freelancing for a company that was supporting Airbnb as one of the management platforms. And I was asked if I can do some graphic design. Well, no. But I thought about it, and the reality was sort of like, what could be the worst thing? I'd probably just be asked not to do it ever again. So I carried on and I said, yes, I can do graphic design. What do you need doing? Let's do it. So basically, literally the same skills as before when I was flagging my way into a videography job. I wasn't asked to complete any tasks there and then, which was great. So I actually had to kind of like take my time, and I was quite slow with it. But eventually, well, I guess they weren't upset with the quality of my designs. And I have to say, I did use quite a lot of sort of, external resources, looking at different examples of how to put things together. But a lot of it was just kind of learning the job and, look at that and it doesn't look good, then rework it. Sam, you might be just thinking, oh my God, it's one of those.
No, I was actually just thinking, like you said before, that the transferable skills, they're so important. And, as you're saying, between photography and film, you've got lighting, you've got adapting to different environments and things like that, similar skill sets. And the same with graphic design, like you have an eye for layout and positioning and so there are things that transfer, so why not? And you've had that experience of working with a graphic designer.
Yes,
You also learn from, so that's great. It's great. I love it.
But honestly, it was just something I never, with videography, at least there was some apparent pull that I thought, oh yeah, I kind of want to try it. With graphic design, it sort of came out of nowhere. And also it was great timing because during the pandemic, I was thinking, well, what am I going to do for the next couple of months? I'm going to have a really nice long break. But after that, it would be nice to eat. Would be good to afford food and bills and things like that. So that was perfect. And obviously, I found it incredibly interesting as well. So it was sort of, the timing and realizing that I'm quite interested in it too. And they've quite enjoyed my work. So about a year and a half later, I decided that I should, take a course actually, so that I'm not exactly self-taught and I'm not necessarily kind of making up things as I go. I felt like it would be really good to have some sort of a foundation. So I did a 12-week evening course with a company called Experience House, and they were great. They actually, as part of their course, they've connected me to a real life client. So I was working on a real life brief, no pressure. It was quite an intense learning curve there as well. But now it's been about, I think it's been a year and a half or maybe 2 years. I'm really bad with time, as you can tell. I've been able to work with companies and do different things such as landing page design, dashboard design, app design. And I really enjoyed that as well, because part of the UX and UI design is user interviews. And you can't tell that probably from from my presenting skills, but I actually really enjoy talking to people, and I really, really like interviewing people and just figuring out how they interact with different products. It's something that definitely I can connect again to photography and videography as well. I just love getting to know people and the way they are unique. It's honestly the most, I can continue talking about that for another 4 hours. It's the most exciting thing for me, and people being themselves, and sort of those very, special moments when they don't necessarily think about the camera being there, whether it's a photography or a video fragment. Really, really love that. So that kind of interest in how people think, how people are, led me to UX and UI design as one of the reasons as well. And just really enjoyed interviewing different people, kind of trying to help them have a better experience. And while I was going through all of that, I was thinking if that was just sort of, a good chance, something that made me kind of quite lucky. And in many ways, I think that is very true. I think it was a very fortunate timing. And I think it was very, it was perfect that my client, who thought of me as a photographer, reached out and asked me if I can also do design, which is, a completely different discipline. Why would I? And I then said yes as well. I think in a way, there's lots of opportunities out there. Like, honestly, so many. It doesn't matter how competitive the industry is. There are opportunities for everyone. I genuinely believe that. And the only thing that you can do to help yourself, or to actually make yourself catch that opportunity, is to be prepared for it. So whenever it comes your way, and there's something you just, and maybe you're not entirely prepared for it, just think that you can do it. It is very possible. You just need to say yes, and then you can figure the rest out. You can spend evenings reading up on the subject. You can, research whatever you need, whatever discipline it is. I mean, there are like tons of resources out there, honestly. And it's kind of, it's very difficult not to kind of be able to learn, I think, especially if that's something that you're really interested in. I think it's whatever sort of fits your learning style, whether it's YouTube videos, or if it's something short, then potentially something on TikTok, on Instagram. You might want to learn from a specific professional. You might want to reach out to them on such resources as LinkedIn or the Dots. There's lots and lots and lots of resources out there. So even if you don't feel necessarily prepared with the discipline, then be prepared for the opportunity and say yes, and then you'll be fine. It's going to be completely fine. What I thought when I was doing a lot of the personal projects is that even though that wasn't the end goal of me taking them on, they all really helped me figure out who I am as a creative. And not only from the point of view, oh, I really like street photography, I'm just going to do that. Or, I really like interviewing people and making videos of that, so I'm going to carry on with that. They also made me learn what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses. And it was incredibly helpful because, in a way, it's kind of a nicer way to learn about yourself, because you don't really have someone who's telling you, you know what, when you do this, it's not great. But here you can do it like that. Sometimes it's quite difficult to take that on. And I feel that there is this very, very sort of like thin line, especially when you take on a brief with a client and they have their vision and they ask you for a specific, they have a specific project in mind. And it's very interesting because, and honestly, that's purely my experience, and anyone who can relate, I'd be very keen to hear your stories on that as well. What's interesting is that you have a client and they approach you and they say, I really like your work that you did. And you say, great, so we're going to get on, because maybe that's one of my personal projects. So I've been quite creatively free there. And then you start working on it and they say, yes, but I actually want this like that, and I want this like this, and also that should be the other way around. And at the end of it, sometimes you might feel like you've almost been conned, because you've been told that you're gonna have creative freedom and they liked you for who you are, but now they're trying to make it that something that's not really what you are, that's not really your creative style. And I think what's really important here is that you need to really communicate your vision to the client. And at the very, very beginning, before you even, before you kind of the pre-production stage of the project, start talking to them about what they think they would like to achieve, how you can help them achieve that, what they think about this specific way of you achieving that. Is there anything else that they'd like in that way of you achieving it? Or are they thinking about something completely else? Because if you take the creative freedom on board and then come back to them with the result, it will be kind of actually painful when they start picking your your work apart. And I've had a lot of situations when I kind of I would shoot myself in the leg. I wouldn't ask enough questions at the beginning of the project, and I'd be just like, yep, okay, so you want this and I know exactly how to do it, see you at the end. And then I'd come back with the result thinking, okay, well, this is like the best thing I've ever put together, tell me the same thing, tell me how happy you are. And then they say, oh, you know what, actually, like, can we change this and also move a few things around? And you know what, I thought about the copy and it should be completely different. And then you're looking at everything falling apart in front of you, the sort of, something that you've cherished so much. So I think in a way, it's so important to make sure that you kind of establish these, guidelines before you jump into it. And then you can always check in with them as well as you go, whether it's photo shoot or a video interview, or you're putting together a wireframe, showing them sort of like little milestones so that yes, you're on the right way, you're not here, you're not there, you are actually heading in the same direction. And is there anything that we can change now or just now so that you don't have to do a complete U-turn later? I think that's just one of the things that would be, for me, so good to remember when I just started off, especially every new discipline. It literally, I repeated myself over and over again. But what I wanted to mention as well, whenever I started something new, I also I definitely made the most of reaching out to different creatives. And one of the resources that I've used for that, I've already mentioned it earlier, is the Dots. I think it's such a good platform for finding people of all sorts of disciplines and being able to have a very, very honest conversation about how how they're doing, what they maybe need at their point of the journey, whether they want to organize a test shoot and then apply for submissions, or they're looking for someone to have a podcast with. And maybe you're also thinking about starting a podcast, so you can you can ask them all the questions about how they've gotten there. I think it's really sort of one of the most important things, especially as a freelancer, because when someone works full-time, they have their own, they have a network of colleagues, and they kind of, if they need a support system, they know where to go. But when you're freelancing, it often feels that you're literally like one-man band, and if you have a question, then you should also answer it. And I think when you reach out to people and you find your team of sort of like-minded creatives, it can do wonders, not just for your sort of your skill set, but also for your portfolio, because at the end of the day, people tend to recommend each other. People tend to refer one another depending on what kind of projects they've done. I've been so lucky to have some of my clients for 5-7 years now, and it's a very heartwarming feeling, actually, and it kind of goes back to me feeling how important being genuine is, because it's just a very supportive environment, and I know that sometimes creative industry can be difficult, but it's it's not at all that. The only thing is that you just need to find your people, and you'll definitely get there. And speaking of finding your people and kind of starting a new thing, what I wanted to mention is that perhaps you might not be a professional when you decide to start a new skill, and that is more than normal. No one is really, waking up the next day after deciding to do graphic design with an incredible skill of with all the design knowledge. But things that you really need to sort of get a job and to start off in a new field, you already have them. I'm pretty sure that you get them as early as school, really, I think. And they are just more and more finessed as you kind of progress in life, and just being able to communicate, just being able to work as a team, which can be difficult, especially if you are working on your own as a freelancer. It can be quite tough, but just knowing how to listen to people, how to ask for help sometimes, even that's quite a difficult skill, I'd say. Reaching out to someone, especially if you don't know them. Maybe you've sort of been looking at someone on Instagram thinking, oh yeah, well, their projects are great. How do they do that? But really the distance between you knowing how they do that and you not knowing how they do it is one question. Just reaching out and asking them about how they do it. And if not everyone is going to get back to you on Instagram, that is fair enough. But if they don't, then you're kind of just where you were. Nothing fell off. Nothing, it's maybe a little bit upsetting, but it's completely fine. And you can always ask other people around you as well. I think information is there definitely for sharing. So if someone doesn't think like that, it's completely fine. But there are more people who think that it's nice to actually give some advice to someone who's especially asking for that. The only other skill that I would like to mention is probably attention to detail. It's just something it can get you far no matter what you're doing. It's just that ability to be able to soak in the information and actually focus on it. And I think it can be quite difficult, but it's incredibly important to make sure that you just sometimes really focus on something, especially if it's at the beginning. It can be a little bit difficult because a lot of new things are flying around. But when you're learning something new, just getting in the zone and actually maybe sometimes, honestly, at the beginning, putting your hand down and realizing that you need to learn quite a few things. But that sort of comes from a skill that's not related to the specific discipline, if that makes sense. And I would say other things that are more proactive, perhaps, that you could also do to get started or further yourself, no matter where you are, really. I think all of these apply to sort of, those who are just beginning and also those who have been doing it for several years as well. I would say what is really, really useful is to keep an eye out for various events like this one, for example. It's great when you can hear other people talk about their experience, when you know that you're not alone in it, that everyone else is going through something similar. I think it's incredibly empowering, especially when you are at the stage where you're questioning that sort of direction in which you are going. That is so, honestly, so refreshing to hear other people saying the same things that were just in your head and now they're everywhere. And also, in terms of seeking for your community, I would recommend two resources. I honestly don't know if I should plug the Dots again because they should start paying me for this already. But I am a big fan of the Dots because honestly, I think it's a fantastic community and people there are incredibly responsive. and I've had some great, experiences of organizing shoots and also people reaching out to me. I can't recommend it highly enough. But also, for example, when I started doing design, I was asking for quite a lot of feedback in Dribble. So that's quite a known community for graphic designers, for UX designers. They upload their samples of work, and then the community comments and potentially suggests things that might be changed, which is great because it's a fantastic opportunity to learn from someone who's been doing it for longer than you. Some of the pointers there are really, really, really outstanding. And another thing would be, if you are thinking about, that perfect client now, or about moving into something else, like a completely different field, why not take on a personal project? You might obviously, and it would be good if you took a little bit of time to think about what that personal project is going to be about. But I would very highly recommend to just think about it. What do you need? I've a few years ago, I had an incredible urge to do a photo shoot in Barcelona. And actually, I've done a few photo shoots when I was on holiday, so quite guilty of mixing kind of work and life. But it was almost a phase when I would go to a foreign country and I would be very focused on getting a photo shoot done. And it all started from me sending out some images to a modeling agency and basically explaining who I am, where I'm coming from. And it was a bit of a it is a bit cheeky, but also everyone does that, so it's completely fine. Basically, I would reach out to a modeling agency, let's say in Barcelona, and I would send them my portfolio of the photos that I would have taken in London, saying, so here are my photos, personal projects that I've done for a variety of clients, and I would very much like to test with some of your models, please. And I have a fantastic makeup artist on board, and we have some great, great wardrobe sorted, and we're going to get it published somewhere as well. It's kind of like a puzzle, because of that, after that, I would go onto LinkedIn or the Dots, and I would look for those stylists and makeup artists and hairstylists to say, hey, I have a model and we are going to get published. So would you like to jump on board? Because I really like your work and it would be great to work with you, because I actually don't live where you do. And again, some people never replied, and it's fair, but I eventually did manage to put together a team, and we pulled the wardrobe and we got published afterwards by simply submitting on Caviar. So if you're a fashion photographer, you should definitely check that website out. It's kind of really easy to get published. So I don't know if I'm really if I'm overselling this, but honestly, it's quite easy to get published. So if you take on a project, do whatever you want, because it's your creative vision. You don't really have an overarching client, and then you can publish it, and then you can apply to a job by saying, hey, I got published there. Great. This, you can always say they were your client. We don't really have to say I submitted and they published me. Would you like to pay me? It's it's honestly it's a funny way, the way these things work, and maybe it's just my personal experience, but I did discover that if you want something to happen, you shouldn't really wait around for it to happen. You should just go and kind of make it happen, and then arrange everything around you. Most of the times, you have an idea, be keen to become part of it when you can explain things. So again, going back to communication, being able to make other people parts of your conversation. And I think on that note, I would say that's these are my thoughts.
Fantastic.
I'm just kind of,
yeah, that's like
sorry.
there's so many great things
said,
there. And yeah, I think if anyone has any questions, please do put them in the chat or use the hand emoji in the chat if you'd rather just sort of unmute and ask your question on camera. Yeah, thank you so much. That's really insightful, actually, especially getting the point of view of from a freelance perspective as well, rather than, you know, just kind of like going for a job. You know, it seems like you have like a lot of like unique ways of finding work. I just wondered, like, what would you say your kind of ratio is in terms of like jobs or projects you've applied for versus what you've got through your network of other creatives, out of curiosity?
I primarily get my work through word of mouth, which is great. And, you know, I feel very, very grateful for how it happens. I haven't actively applied for a project for a while. I know that there is currently, I hope I don't jinx it, but there is currently a project sort of in the pitching stage where a colleague of mine who is a photographer is pitching me as a videographer, and I'm kind of not involved. Apart from sending out my portfolio and the quote, I haven't yet met the client. So hopefully they like my portfolio and then they meet me, and you know. But on that note, what I wanted to say is that it made me think of something. When you're applying for a job, what's really important is to make your application relevant. So whenever I apply, I try to, first of all, obviously get as much information as possible on the client, who they are, where they come from, what are they, you know, what do they value as a brand, what's important for them, what kind of projects have they done before, what sort of direction they have going for them, what sort of, you know, tone of voice. And then I pick the projects that are relevant from what I've done and send them a tailored PDF explaining why I like this opportunity, but also what I can do for them as a person, how they can benefit from hiring me as their creative. Because I think I honestly really appreciate how difficult it is to get a job, whether it's, you know, a full-time job or a freelance project, or, you know, something in between. It's very difficult because there's so many people applying, and it's quite a lot of work. But I think what sets someone apart is that you can always tell whether they've, you know, applied for a job because they also have 10 other jobs to apply, and then tomorrow it's going to be 20. So you better, you know, put this template in and replace the name if you have the name, or maybe you just say, hi there. By the way, I always kind of try and really snoop around LinkedIn like a creep and try and find out more personal. Yeah, well, everyone does that, so, you know, it's completely fine, I guess. But I try to find out more personal information. If there is, you know, a creative director, I want to know their name. I want to send that email to the name rather than to, you know, hi team member, or, you know, any other sort of a bit of impersonal placeholder. And I always want to say something along the lines of also cover letters should never be long, because really people just look at your work and then they look at your work and then they read the cover letter, or maybe they skim through the cover letter and then they look at the work, but really your work is most important here. It needs to be relevant to what they're looking for. If they're a fashion brand, they're probably not going to be interested in like product photography unless they want specific products to be shot. So making sure that it's tailored and saying something along the lines of, hi, name, saw this opportunity, looks great, I loved your project, what did you love about it? Point out like some things that you really loved about it. Congratulations on achieving the funding, something to make sure that you're relevant, that you know what's going on with them. And then say, I'd really like to be considered, because I think that my sort of previous experience at insert name here would really benefit you, as I've already worked with this kind of, this kind of environment, these kind of products, this modeling agency, anything that would kind of tie you again to make you as close to the existing group almost as possible. Yeah, I would say that was something that I noticed once I changed, because at the beginning I was applying, I don't know, just find as many positions as possible and apply to them all today and then repeat tomorrow. And it kind of drove me crazy. And also nobody replied. I was just thinking, what was I doing wrong? And at some point I just thought, I can't do it again. So I'm just going to send something quite like, more tailored, rather focus on one person or maybe 3 people than on 20 and get nothing. And it worked. So I definitely recommend that. And hopefully they'll like you after that as well. They start taking you on for their further projects, and then they also start recommending you to other people.
Absolutely. And oh, sorry. What was it like working with a graphic designer for the first time? Is that what kind of got you interested in potentially switching to other mediums, or?
It's very interesting because at the time when we met, one of my close friends was also a graphic designer. So I was in a graphic designer sandwich. And I was really curious about what it is, because I have to admit, I've never been exposed to it much. So I had no idea how things are done. And I remember I started also, when I started dabbling in it, I would always ask them to take a look at what I've done. And then they just look at it for a second, make it so much better in 3 seconds. And it would make me feel that I'm quite frustrated that I didn't see it. It seemed so obvious. Well, of course, it's looking great now. Why couldn't I do that? And there was a bit of a sort of, oh, I don't know, do I even want to show it? Because, I feel a bit precious about this. And I worked on this for 3 hours and 5 minutes, and it's going to look completely different, much better. But what about my ego? I ended up really enjoying these sessions. I ended up really, really enjoying tapping into their knowledge. I still do. I just really enjoy. It doesn't matter actually whether it's graphic design or videography or photography. It's so rewarding to be able to discuss things with someone who knows, and also with someone who knows more than you. It's so good. I genuinely can't recommend it enough. If you have friends who are doing something you'd like to be doing, get in there, become their nightmare, ask them so many questions. To be fair though, I'm sure because they're your friends, they're just going to be very happy to help you. So it's not something that's difficult for them.
Yeah, for sure. I love that, become their nightmare.
Yeah.
I must admit, like even myself at work, I've been in the industry for 13 years, and sometimes I get a particular project or something, and you get it. You've been staring at this thing for like 4 hours, and something's not working, but because you've been staring at it for so long, you can't see what it is.
That's
And
very
just
true.
having that person that can come in and say like, "Oh, you need to move that or change that color or whatever it is super helpful." So yeah, when you're a freelancer, it can be quite isolating, but having that community of other creatives around you is so important for sure. And I just want to say, like, you're such a hustler. I love it, the way that you kind of like seek out projects, and the the strength of the stories that you're obviously telling through your self-initiated work as well, like, must really grip people in your portfolio. And I love your fearlessness as well, in terms of kind of investing in yourself. And learning all these new skills all the time. And you know, I think it is something, especially in this industry, that you have to do. I mean, I myself, I did a course on Facebook ads, like
Oh,
marketing ads and stuff. And as soon as I finished the course, they changed the algorithm, so it looked completely different.
wow, that's difficult.
But it's just, you know, everything is changing all the time. And so I think it's such an amazing attitude to have, you know, not to be scared. And I love that you said as well, like, you know, if you think about doing it 3 times, on the 4th time you think about it, you've got to do
Yeah.
it. I think that's great.
Oh,
So
mm.
yeah. So yeah, I think if there, unless there's any other kind of end points you want to kind of leave people with, I think
Yeah,
really.
I guess what you just mentioned, it's obviously incredibly nice to hear that, and thank you so much. That's very kind. I think what it kind of like boils down to is um I'm quite an introverted person. I'm not sure whether you can tell or not, and it's yeah, okay. But you know, I definitely sort of am the kind of a person who recharges alone, and all of that, everything that comes in that package. But I think the reason why I reach out to complete strangers and sort of, you know, blag my way through jobs is because I really want to. You know, it's not like, you know, there isn't any deep secret behind it. I think, especially with the self-directed projects, I just really wanted them to happen. And there wasn't, you know, a client coming up saying, you now can do this. And I thought, well, it's more important for me that this happens than anything else, really. So since I want it so much, I might as well just do it. And really beautiful, nice things came out of saying yes. So I would honestly just, if that's like the only takeaway from today, I would say that's the main one. If even if you're doubting yourself, thinking, oh, I'm not sure, should I? Yeah, why not? Because, you know, at the end of the day, if it's like a horrible experience, then you're at least going to laugh at that, and then have a nice one after that. But more often than not, these kind of opportunities, when you're sort of prepared for that luck, it comes your way. So as long as you just stay quite open-minded and interested in what's going around, it's going to happen.
For sure, absolutely. And yeah, hopefully if there's anybody watching who is stuck in that cycle of just that scattergun
Yeah.
application kind of time, everyone's been there, we know what it's like. You know, why not take a leaf out of Olga's book and you know, take that time for yourself and reinvest in yourself and what you enjoy doing, and then use that to your advantage as another portfolio piece. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Olga. That's been really, really interesting. And yeah, I hope everyone's kind of taken loads away from that. I know I have. And the recording will be going up on the Tern Heads platform. If you want to watch it back later on, or if you want to tell any friends or any other creatives that you think might benefit from it as well. So yeah, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you again, Olga. Olga's LinkedIn is in the chat as well if anyone wants to. Oh no, it's not. Let me put it in now. If anyone wants to connect with Olga on LinkedIn, her profile's up there now. So yeah, you know, build that network, start talking to people, and share your experiences and your projects, and make your own luck as well, for sure. You know, it's competitive, but if you keep trying, you'll get there. So yeah, just want to say good luck, everyone, with your careers, and we will see you at the next Tern Heads event.